This is the second part of the story. The first part is located at the link in the video description. Happy listening. Why did I start cheating on Jeff? I was bored, I was lonely. I needed some excitement in my life. Maybe it was just because I could. Jeff was gone over 14 hours a day, getting home between 7:30 and 8. I worked until 3:30. That gave me plenty of time to do whatever I wanted. Jim was such a flirt and very handsome. Over time, working together, we drew close. We confided in each other when we should have been confiding in our spouses. One afternoon, after a serious flirting session, Jim took me in his arms and gave me a kiss, which I returned. We quickly separated. We drew back, both embarrassed, smiled, and then started laughing nervously. I was confused as well. I liked the kiss, but knew it was not right. I was a married woman after all. We continued putting the materials away when Jim came close to me again, taking me into his arms. "Lauren, that kiss was something special. I want to kiss you again," he told me as he looked into my eyes. He kissed me again. This one was as good as the first one, except this time he took liberties with his hands sliding up to cup my breasts. Jim cleared a table and took me on top of it. The sex was very good. Jim is an accomplished lover, and his equipment is, well, let's say he is well endowed. Having something that big to play with was fun. No knock on Jeff, who is average in size. Jim was just bigger. The sex was good, but the naughtiness of it made it exciting. That's what was missing in my life, a sense of excitement. I was no longer bored. I looked forward to each day now and to having sex with Jim. Looking back now, I think Jim and I would agree it was one huge mistake. I deluded myself into thinking I did not love Jeff as much as I should. I am reminded of that old saying, "You don't know what you've got until you lose it." It was all Jim's idea, the stupid trip to Florida. I should have known better. Jeff had been acting funny lately, sort of cold and aloof. I called Jim and told him we would have to back off, cool it for a while. Then he had this foolish idea to take me on a business trip to Florida. It did sound exciting to go to South Beach with a big handsome man on my arm. I don't know how he did it, but he got our manager to include me on the trip. It's hard for me to remember the exact words that were said. Jeff might remember it differently, but this is the way I remember it. I remember the night I told Jeff. He came in the front door. He threw his briefcase on the table and remarked, "It was a tough day. I am glad to see you are in a good mood." I replied, "I'm happy and I hope you will be too after I tell you my good news." I beamed. "My day wasn't that great. You go first." "Okay," I giggled. "I have been asked to go to South Beach to attend a seminar for the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program. It is an all-expenses-paid stay at the Victor Hotel, one of the old Art Deco hotels on Ocean Ave in the heart of South Beach. The bad part is I will be gone from Friday this week to Saturday next week. I will be gone for 9 days, honey. Do you mind if I go?" He did not seem happy or sad, angry or even surprised at the news. This should have been another clue that not all was as it seemed. I thought he would be upset. I thought he would argue. He did not want me going there without him. I looked into his eyes to see what he was feeling. His eyes were locked on mine and with no emotion, and asked, "Is it important for your job to go on this trip?" I told him, "It could be. I might get passed by for future promotion if I could not travel." He stood and walked to the front door, staring at the front lawn for a few moments. He then almost whispered something I could barely make out. I thought he said it was okay. I asked him, "Did you just say I could go?" Still standing at the door, looking out, he nodded his head yes. He never once looked at me. He nodded his head, yes, I could go. I was so relieved. I was sure if he looked at me, he would be able to see the lie on my face. I was now sure he knew nothing about my affair with Jim. Jeff would never give me permission go if he did, right? I felt as giddy as a schoolgirl. I went to Jeff and hugged him, saying, "You won't regret this." When he didn't respond, I ran to the phone. I had to tell Jim. "Jim, Jeff said I could go with you on the Florida trip." I was laughing and giggling all the time I was talking to Jim. One time I did look over to Jeff. He was standing by the table watching and listening to the phone conversation. When I looked his way, he turned and went out the door. His expression was still that same blank stare. Where in the hell was my head at? After the phone call, we spent a quiet evening at home. Jeff sat alone, staring out the window, lost in his own thoughts. It finally dawned on me that he did not want me to go on this trip. However, He would not stand in my way if it meant advancement in my job. That is what I thought. If only I knew his plan. I should have. Acquiescing so easily to my request to leave without him was so unlike Jeff. It should have raised warning signals. In my eagerness to spend time with Jim, I failed to heed the warnings. Jim wanted to take me to the airport, but Jeff wouldn't hear of it. He insisted and took time off from work to take me to the airport. The ride was quiet. Jeff was acting funny. I sensed something was wrong and asked him, "Jeff, are you upset? Are you all right with me taking this trip?" He responded that he would be lonely and miss me while I was gone. I assured him that this would be a working business trip with no time for vacationing. At the airport, Jim came up to me and kissed me hello in front of Jeff and made some stupid comment about taking care of me on the trip. I thought Jim had blown it when Jeff glared at Jim. I quickly reassured Jeff that Jim meant he would not let anything bad happen to me. Jeff turned to me and said, "I know what he means, Lauren." I breathed a sigh of relief when he turned back to Jim and said, "Thanks for looking out for her." Jim urged us to go through security. He went through first. As I was about to give my boarding pass and license to the TSA agent, Jeff pulled me back. "You're leaving and not saying goodbye to your husband?" he asked. I gave Jeff a hug and a kiss, replying, "Of course, how thoughtless of me." He held me close, saying, "I need to talk to you before you leave. We have never been apart for this long before. I want you to know that I love you and have since I was 16 years old. You're leaving on a plane and I will be driving home alone. Anything could happen to us. If for some reason you should never see me again, I want you to know that you are the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I love you more each day. If anything ever happened to you, I could not go on." He kissed and hugged me again, saying, "I love you. Have a good trip and come home to me safely." I blandly responded, "I love you too, honey. I have to go now." As I was turning to leave, Jeff pulled me back. "Lauren, I know I told you it was all right for you to go. I meant it when I said it. Now that you are leaving, I find that I don't want you to go. It is still not too late. Tell Jim you can't go and come home with me. Blame it all on me. What do you think?" "Jeff, you know that I can't back out on Mr. Beckman at this late date. The tickets are bought and paid for. Besides, he needs me at this seminar." "I know I'm being selfish. I don't want you to go." I was pissed. He was telling me now at the last possible second that he did not want me to go. I never even thought for a moment about his feelings. I told him, "Jeff, I have to go. Don't try to stop me. My mind is made up. I'm going on this trip. I will be a great help to Jim. I can't let him down." I looked into his eyes. He looked so miserable. He really looked sad, like he was about to lose his best friend. I honestly thought he was going to cry. For a moment, I was about to tell him I wouldn't go. Then I thought, no, I want this time with Jim. I turned away, giving my boarding pass and license to the agent. She obviously heard what Jeff told me. As she was looking at my license, she said, "He seems to really love you." I took a quick glance at Jim and replied, "I guess so." When I turned back to retrieve my license and boarding pass, she looked at me with sad eyes and said, "He doesn't know, does he?" "What?" I replied with obvious irritation. "What are you talking about?" "You're going to break his heart when he finds out." I told her, "You have no idea what you're talking about." I reached out and pulled the pass and license out of her hand. I started to turn to walk away when she grabbed my arm and pulled me back to her and whispered to me, "When he finds out, it will break your heart as well." She continued to whisper as she let my arm go. "Shame on you, girl. The one behind you loves you. The big one over there will break your heart." I walked down the roped-off area where Jeff and Jim were waiting for me. Jeff noticed my face was flushed and gave me a quizzical look. Jeff was always perceptive of my emotions and guessed something was wrong. I brushed him off with a look. Jim never knew anything was wrong. If I was thinking straight, I should have known which man was the better one for me. I also should have known that Jeff could read my feelings and would know something was up. Jeff stayed to watch us go through security. I glanced back at him one time while I was putting my shoes in one of the gray plastic bins. After I walked through the body scanner, I turned to wave goodbye to Jeff, but he was nowhere in sight. I thought it strange, but just put it out of my mind. The flight was pleasant, but lonely. Jim fell right to sleep, leaving me to watch the in-flight TV until we landed. We checked into our room, not waiting to put our clothes away. We jumped into the shower and then made love on the king-size bed. Jim performed like he usually did, giving me 2 orgasms on the first day. After we put our clothes away, I decided to call Jeff at our home number early to let him know that I had arrived safely. Strangely, no one answered. Remembering what Jeff said about not seeing one another again, I was suddenly worried. I called a few more times, but still no answer. I was really worried. Finally, around 8 o'clock, my cell phone rang. I could see it was from Jeff. "Hi, honey. I'm glad you called. I rang the house a few times and you didn't answer the phone. I was worried about you. Where were you?" I inquired. "I stopped at one of the local bars with the guys from work. They have been raving about a club and talked me into going, that's all," Jeff responded. Incredulously, I was hit with a fit of jealousy. I realize now, I thought if I was cheating, maybe he was a cheater too. "You better not be hitting on any girls, Jeff. Remember, you're a married man. I don't think I could forgive you if you did." "Why do you think I would cheat on you? Have I ever given you any reason to suspect me of betraying you or our marriage? You know me better than that. I could never hurt you by doing something as dirty as that. I know you would never do anything like that to me, Lauren. That's why I let you to go on this trip to Florida. I trust you completely. I trust you with my heart, even my life. You know that. You do, don't you?" he asked. "Of course, honey, I feel the same way too," I lied. "I don't know why I said that." "I know you won't do something like that to me," I stammered. "Listen, Jeff, I am really tired from the flight. I think it's making me bitchy. Will you call tomorrow and I will be in a better mood, okay?" "Sure, Lauren, we can talk tomorrow," he replied. "Good night, Jeff, I love you." I needed to tell him that I loved him. I don't know why. I felt I was slipping away from him. I really did not want to lose him. I just wanted this adventure for myself. "Good night, Lauren," he said as he hung up the phone. The thought hit me. Did he say "I love you" back to me? I wasn't sure. I thought he must have. He always did in the past when we talked. I must have missed it. After Jeff's phone call, Jim and I made love again. This was going to be quite the vacation. After breakfast Saturday morning, we decided to go to the pool and get some sun. I had purchased 2 special outfits for this trip and decided to wear the more conservative one today. It was a red bikini with a real skimpy top. The bottoms were no more than a large thong. I knew that Jim would love it. I walked to the pool in front of Jim. I turned to look at him, and he had his eyes glued to my nearly bare butt. I turned back and smiled to myself. I sure did have an effect on him. I liked the thought. We sat on 2 chaises and enjoyed the warmth of the sun. Jim sat up and was talking to me about the seminars we would be giving starting on Tuesday morning. Without any notice, he leaned in and gave me a kiss. I returned his kiss and put my hand on the back of his head, caressing the nape of his neck. We shared more kisses, each kiss more passionate than the one before. I asked Jim if he would like to head back to the room. His face lit up with a huge smile, and he helped me get up and pack up our stuff. We walked off hand in hand like a couple in love. After dinner, we went back to the room to wait for the expected phone call from Jeff, but none came that night. For some reason, that pissed me off that he would not call. Poor Jim. I was in such a foul mood that he would get no loving tonight. Sunday, we were up early. Jim and I wanted to walk on the boardwalk in Lummis Park. We were hoping to see some movie stars cavorting on the beach. Unfortunately, we saw none. As we were leaving the park entrance directly across the street from the hotel, my cell rang. I looked at the phone and saw it was Jeff. I was still mad at him for not calling last night. Jim asked me who it was, and I replied with a laugh, "It's Doofus." Jim laughed at my little joke as well. I should take this. Something bad could have happened. Why else would he call on a Sunday morning? "Jeff, is everything all right? Has something happened?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong, honey. I was lonely and just wanted to hear your voice. It's nice to know that you're worried about me." "I worry about you all the time, Jeff. It is Sunday morning and I thought something bad might have happened. You didn't call last night. You scared the shit out of me." I was practically yelling at him. I was very annoyed. "I didn't know I would be such a bother to you, Lauren." I knew he was hurt. I could hear it in his voice. I was feeling lonely. I thought that speaking to my wife would cheer me up. "Sorry to bother you." Before I could answer, he hung up the phone. "It's no bother," I said into the dead phone. I turned off my phone and walked to a nearby bench. "What did he want?" Jim asked. "He was lonely and wanted to talk to me. Why did I snap at him like that? It was a question I asked to myself, not to Jim, but he answered anyway. Lauren, we have been having this affair for 6 months now. Maybe you're getting tired of him. It might be time to let him go, get a divorce. Then we could spend more time together. We won't have to sneak around anymore. Right, I snapped. Your wife won't mind if we go to your house for a matinee, would she? Yeah, like we won't have to sneak around anymore. I smirked at what I told him next. Jim, you make $38,000 a year. You have no prospects of doing better. After Jeff's last promotion with his year-end bonus, he makes almost 200 grand a year. I like you, Jim. The sex is incredible, but you're not that good. Jeff is not bad in that department, so I will really not miss out too much. But someday, he's going to be the CEO of that bank, and I intend to be there to share it with him. So there will be no divorce. Get that idea out of your head. Besides, you will never get a divorce from Jane. You will never leave your 2 kids either. So stop bothering me about a divorce. You're right, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy each other's company while we are here, right? Jim suggested. Right, stud, I beamed. Taking his hand in mine, we ran across the street to our room. Jim and I took a quick nap after a delightful bit of lovemaking. After we woke, we had a quick bite to eat and decided to hit the pool again. I told Jim, I have a special outfit picked out to wear to the pool today. I hope you will like it. I was wearing the tangerine cover-up, but Jim wanted to see the whole outfit right away. I refused, telling him, you will see it at the pool. I walked to the pool, and Jim was right behind me. Jim sat down while I remained standing with my back to him. I turned and took off the cover-up. I laughed and asked, you like? I like, Jim replied, admiring my naked breasts. The bikini bottoms I was wearing were really no more than a tiny thong. I sensually sat down next to Jim saying, the girls need some suntan lotion. Would you be a dear and help me out? I handed Jim a bottle of lotion. He took the bottle and poured a liberal amount of lotion on my breasts and started massaging it onto the soft skin of my breasts. His big hands felt good on my bare skin. I also never felt as naughty as I did at that moment. After enjoying Jim massaging my breasts, I turned over and asked him to put some oil on my butt, now completely exposed in my tiny thong. Jim spent a long time massaging my bare ass. I turned over on my back again and asked Jim, are you going to lie back and get some sun too? He replied, I can't, look what you've done to me, pointing at his crotch. I looked at the bulge in his trunks and reached out and gave his hard cock a squeeze and rubbed it a few times. While running my fingers up and down the outside of his trunks, I asked, did I do that? At this point, one of the hotel employees approached saying, Miss, some guests have been complaining about your display of nudity at the pool. Such displays are not allowed on the hotel premises. I must insist that you cover up. Embarrassed, I looked around at the parents of 2 small children glaring at us. I grabbed my cover-up and put it on. We had to wait for Jim's erection to go down before we could leave the pool area. Back in the room, we tore off our clothes and jumped into the bed. No preliminaries were needed. I was well lubricated. My thong was soaked as much as a thong can be soaked. Jim moved between my legs and slid into me easily. After only 7 or 8 strokes, I could feel him start to speed up, and I knew he was close to coming. Before I could tell him to wait for me, he started groaning, and I could feel him shooting off inside of me. When he was done, he rolled of me and lay next to me with a satisfied look on his face. I was certainly not satisfied, and yelled, Jim, what the fuck? Sorry, babe. I was too turned on by what you did there in public. I was incredibly turned on. I couldn't stop. Jim was incapable of performing again so soon, and we both drifted off to sleep. When I woke up later, I saw Jim out on the balcony in one of the thick terry cloth robes the hotel provides for their guests. I walked behind him and wrapped my arms around him, saying, do you think you can get the big guy up for another round, stud? I may need another 30 minutes or so. You have worn me out, he laughed. I laughed and said, we'll see about that, and slipped my hand inside the opening of Jim's robe. My hand was moving up and down as I played with his cock in an attempt to get him aroused again. Soon I felt his cock growing bigger, and my hand was no longer moving up and down, but in and out. Then I had this crazy idea. I would expose Jim as I exposed myself at the pool. I stopped massaging his erection, reached up and pulled the robe off Jim's shoulders, exposing his cock to anyone who was looking. Jim immediately turned around with a shocked look on his face. I grabbed his cock and said while pulling him into the room, Now let's put this to good use. I pulled him into the room, pulling him behind me by his cock. We didn't jump straight into fucking this time. We kissed and stroked one another. Jim got between my legs and licked my pussy with long and slow strokes with his tongue. I felt wonderful and I was getting very excited. I wanted to return the favor and switch places and was soon giving Jim pleasure with my mouth. I was licking up and down his cock like a lollipop when the phone rang. I realized it must be Jeff and told Jim to be quiet while I talked to him. I picked up on the fifth ring. "Hello, Jim," I managed to squeak out as Jim tweaked my erect nipple. "Lauren," Jeff asked with concern in his voice, "are you okay? You sound funny. It took a long time for you to pick up the phone and you seem out of breath." Thinking quickly, I replied, "I was in the shower when I heard the phone ring. I grabbed a towel and ran to answer the phone. You should see me sitting naked on the bed all wet. I think you would get some naughty ideas." "I am sure I would, babe. I'm calling to see how your day was. Did you have a productive time at the seminar?" "Oh," was all I could get out. I was very surprised. Jeff had never turned down the opportunity for a little phone sex when he got the chance. It got him anxious to give me great welcome home sex. "Yes, Jeff, we had a good day at the seminar," I continued. "How was your day, honey?" "I feel down, kind of sorry for myself. I miss your sweet voice. I miss giving you a hug and getting a kiss in return. Most of all, I miss you lying in bed next to me at night. That bed gets big and lonely when you're not here to share it with. I don't have to tell you that. You are experiencing the same thing. You know what it's like waking up alone in the morning." That's all I heard when Jim pushed his big cock into my face and tried to jam it past the phone into my mouth. I lowered the phone from my face, tried to cover the mouthpiece, grabbed Jim's balls and gave them a squeeze. He moved back and I told him again to shut the fuck up. I put the phone back to my ear, replying to Jeff. "Right, honey, that's right," I lied. "Listen, Jeff, I'm freezing here. I'm all wet. I have to go now. I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay? I love you," I told him like I always did at the end of a call. "Right," he murmured sarcastically. "Goodbye, Lauren." He hung up the phone. I actually looked at the phone before I put it down. I sat on the bed and pulled my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around my legs. I had a bad feeling about the phone call. Something was not right. I could not put my finger on it. Damn Jim. Something happened when he stuck his dick in my face and I missed it. I was tempted to call Jeff back when Jim interrupted my thoughts. "What's going on with you, Lauren?" Jim asked. "You look like you just lost your best friend." Maybe I did. There was something off with that phone call from Jeff. I have a real bad feeling. I hope he does not know about us. That was the second time that I said I love you to him, that he did not say it back to me. He's never done that before. He always tells me he loves me when we hang up. The first time was Friday. I thought he said it and I didn't hear it. Tonight, I know he didn't say it on purpose. Maybe he didn't say it Friday on purpose either. If that were true, it would mean he knows about us. He would have had to know before he allowed you to go on this trip. You said yourself, if he knew, he never would have let you go with me. Logic tells us that he doesn't know a thing. You're probably right, Jim. Jim was right, I thought. There is no way that Jeff could know. Still, in the back of my mind, I had an uneasy feeling. Jim still wanted to make love. I decided, what the hell, why not? Jim let me down earlier in the day. He owed me at least one orgasm, and I told him that. Jim tried his best that night. I know that when I came, I was a bit noisy. I hope not too many guests heard my scream. Tuesday morning saw Jim and me up early and off the first day of our seminars. When we returned that evening, we were both too tired to engage in any amorous pursuits. Jim actually fell asleep early while I waited up for a call from Jeff. By 10 o'clock, I was furious with him for not calling again. By 11 o'clock, the fear crept back into my mind. Did he know and was not calling on purpose? Should I call him? No, it was too late. I thought about what Jim said yesterday and had to agree Jeff knew nothing. If I really believed that, why did it take so long to fall asleep that night? Wednesday was the same as Tuesday. We both dragged ourselves back to the hotel room and ordered dinner in. After eating and a quick shower, Jim was refreshed and wanted sex. I was a wreck. I couldn't think of anything except waiting for Jeff's phone call. When it didn't come, I was terrified. There was no way he would not call 2 nights in a row. Even Jim was beginning to become concerned. Jim's wife had called him every day. Now he was beginning to wonder. When I did not receive a phone call by 9 o'clock on Thursday, I called my mom and explained to her that I had not heard from Jeff since Monday, and would she go to the house and check up on Jeff. My mom said of course and would go right over there. 30 minutes later, my cell rang and it was from our home phone. I picked it up blurting, "Jeff, I'm so glad you finally called. Are you okay?" "It's me, Lauren," Mom replied. "Jeff is not here. I looked through all the rooms in the house. He is not lying unconscious in any of them. All his clothes are in the closets, and the computer is in the office. Would you mind telling me what is going on?" "Nothing is going on, Mom," I lied. "We had a little argument on the phone, and I guess Jeff is mad at me. I'm sure it will be all right when I finally talk to him. I'm relieved to know he is not lying unconscious in one of the rooms like you said. If you hear from him, please ask him to call me." "I will, Lauren. This is so unlike him. You must have said or done something really bad for him not to call you for 3 days." "No, Mom, nothing that bad. Just have him call if you see him. Thanks for doing this for me. I'll see you when I get home. Bye, Mom." "Well, all right, honey. I miss you and can't wait to see you on Saturday. Good night, Lauren." After the phone call from my mom, I was even more worried. Where in the hell could he be? Why wasn't he at home? I realized I would have to wait 2 more days to find out, unless he called or I could get a hold of him. I decided to call myself, the home line, and his cell. I got voicemail on both lines. I left beseeching messages on both lines, telling him how much I missed him and couldn't wait to speak with him. I also said if he was mad at me for any reason, we could work it out when I got home, and please don't do anything rash. I was beginning to believe that my marriage might be over. Friday seemed to drag on forever. I was unsurprised not to get a phone call that night. I did call my home phone and Jeff's cell phone, but did not get a return call. Needless to say, a sullen Jim did not get any sex that night either. I was up early Saturday morning. I was packed and dressed before Jim even got up. It was about 11 o'clock when we left the room to check out. When the elevator door opened up to the lobby, I looked across to the checkout desk and saw the attendant pick up his phone and make a phone call. He spoke for a few seconds and hung up as we approached the front of the desk. Jim gave the clerk our key cards and his credit card. The badge on the clerk's shirt indicated his name was Carlos. Carlos gave Jim the credit card back and had him sign some papers. What he said next caused my brain to turn to mush. He ambushed us when he said, "Mr. Beckman, Mrs. Carlson, I hope you enjoyed your stay here at the Victor and hope to see you back again soon." When I heard him say my real name, my mind went blank. All I could do was look back to him and say, "What did you call me?" "You are Mrs. Carlson, aren't you?" he asked with a sly smile. My smart answer was, "Why do you think that?" He placed 2 photos on the counter in front of us. One was a photo of Jim sitting in the hotel restaurant. The other was of me, obviously taken on the day I tried to sunbathe by the pool topless. The photo clearly showed my naked breasts and it was cut off just above my nipples. Carlos went on to explain how he received the photos. "A man was checking out and asked me if I knew the people in the photos. I told him I did. I told him that you were the Beckmans. You are well known here after the display of your naked charms last Monday." The man went on to tell me that I was wrong. He said the man in the photo is in fact Jim Beckman, but the woman with him is not Jim's wife, but my wife, Lauren Carlson. "He was here?" "Jeff was here. When did he get here?" I asked. Carlos once again gave me a look I could not understand. "Let me take a look." Carlos typed into his computer and informed me, "A Mr. Jeff Carlson checked in last Friday at 4 and checked out Tuesday at noon." "Oh my God, Jim, he was here the whole weekend," I exclaimed. Carlos turned to me and asked, "You are Mrs. Carlson, aren't you?" "Yes, I am," I shamefully admitted. "Good. In that case, I have something for you." Carlos smiled that same enigmatic smile as he handed me an envelope. I looked at it. It was not addressed to anyone. I opened the envelope and took out the folded paper inside. I opened it up and read the 3 words printed on it. "Lauren, goodbye, doofus." I felt as if I would faint and leaned up against Jim for support. After he steadied me, he took the paper from my hand and read it. I could see a worried look come over his face as he whispered to me, "Come on, Lauren, let's get out of here." Before we could leave, Carlos called to Jim. "I have an envelope for you as well, Mr. Beckman." He held out his hand with the envelope. Jim stared at it for a long while. I know he did not want to touch it. Finally, Jim took it and pulled out the paper inside and read it. Jim read it and turned to look out the window that faced Ocean Ave. and almost absent-mindedly dropped the paper to the floor. I picked up the paper and read it. Did you think you were going to get off scot-free, asshole? I spent the last 2 hours this morning with your wife. I don't think you will receive the homecoming you thought you were going to get. I showed her all my evidence. This is only the beginning. I will try my best to make your life a living hell. Jim was still staring out the window. I took the 2 pictures and the letters of Jim and me. As I was putting them in my purse, I saw Carlos pick up the phone and say, "Did you hear it?" I stared at him as he continued, "Was it all you expected? That's good, sir. I hope to see you at the Victor again. You have made your stay a most interesting one. The same to you, sir. Goodbye." "Was that my husband?" I asked. Carlos once again gave me that smile, but said nothing. I told Jim, "Let's go, we have a plane to catch." On the way to the airport, I called my mom. I asked her to meet us at JFK Airport. Perplexed, my mom asked, "Isn't Jeff picking you up?" "I don't know, Mom. We did have that argument, and I know he's very upset with me right now." "I can't believe that, honey. Jeff would never leave you stranded." "Lauren," my mom asked, now with suspicion in her voice, "what exactly was your argument about?" "Nothing, Mom. It is nothing for you to worry about." "That's bullshit. It must have been something big for him to not pick you up. Plus, the trip to your house to see where he was Thursday night, no phone calls. It had to have been something big." Then, with horror in her voice, and maybe some realization of what might have gone on, she asked in a loud voice, "My God, Lauren, what have you done?" I started blubbering. "I haven't done anything that couldn't be fixed. Mom, please come to the airport in case Jeff doesn't show up." "If you've done what I think you've done, he won't be there. Don't worry, I'll pick you up." Then she hung up the phone. I don't remember much about the cab ride to the airport or going through security and boarding the plane. It was as if my mind just shut down and I was operating on autopilot. I did not start to have any lucid thoughts until we were in the air. Once my mind started working again, I pulled out the photos of Jim and me. It was obvious when the picture of me was taken. Jeff had to see what transpired between Jim and me on Monday. I then looked closely at the picture of Jim. He was sitting in a booth and wearing a black shirt. The only time he wore that shirt was on Monday evening at the hotel restaurant. A cold shiver went down my spine. The guy sitting with the Mets ball cap and camera must have been Jim. If he saw everything we did on Monday, I knew a divorce could be in my future. Another thing was bothering me. In Jeff's letter to me, he called himself Doofus. I only called him Doofus once. That was when I answered his phone call on Sunday. Somehow he must have had us wired for sound. I shuddered to think what he would do if he heard our whole conversation. I could only hope he would pick me up at JFK to take me home. I thought the odds of that happening weren't good. Jim was sitting in the seat next to the window. Every time I looked at him, he was looking out the window, but I knew he was really seeing nothing. I spent most of the flight home staring at the letters and pictures. I kept going over in my mind the phone calls I received from Jeff. If Jeff was in Miami, who knows what he saw or heard? The not knowing terrified me. The most disturbing thing was the last phone call. I knew that night that something was wrong. Something was off with that call. His attitude was off, and there was something I missed. I now felt it was very important, and Jim sticking his cock in my face made me miss it. After running all the events through my mind, I knew I could do nothing until I saw Jeff again. When the flight landed, I couldn't wait to leave the plane. I ran through the terminal until I left the security area. If Jeff was coming to pick me up, I should see him there. There's a small ramp which leads to the concourse where Jeff should be waiting. I said a quick prayer as I came off the ramp. I saw my mom waiting for me. I asked, "Is Jeff here?" Mom shook her head left to right and said, "No." Jim followed right behind me and he looked around and did not see Jane. He looked crestfallen. He quickly took out his phone and made a call to his wife, Jane. "It's me. Will you pick me up?" he asked. He listened for a while and then ended the call. He looked at us and said, "She hung up. She's not coming." He walked to a bench and put his face into his hands. I was sure he was crying. Mom walked to Jim, pulled him by his arm and said to me, "Let's go, I'll drive you both home." On the drive to my house, Mom kept giving me withering looks. Once I turned to look at Jim. He was looking out the window and tears were streaming down his face. Like me, I thought. He was thinking this trip was a stupid idea, definitely not worth it. Arriving home, I did not know if Jeff would be there. I asked Jim to wait in the car. A confrontation would not be good at this point, if ever. I ran into the house yelling, "I'm home, Jeff!" There was no response. "Jeff, are you here?" I called out again. Silence. I ran through the house looking for Jeff. I went into our bedroom and found his closet and dresser empty. Panicking, I ran past Mom standing by the dining room table going straight to Jeff's office. When I looked in the room, I knew I was in trouble. The office was empty. Realizing he was gone, I walked into the living room and heavily sat down. It took only a few moments to appreciate the fact that he had 4 days to make plans. The removal of his clothes and personal items may be just the beginning. What else had he done? Eventually, I turned to look at my mother. She was standing by the dining room table with an envelope in her hand. Mom handed the papers to me. The writing in Jeff's hand simply said, "Divorce paperwork." She then handed me a jewel case with a sheet of paper attached. The paper said, "If you want to know why, look at the DVD." Mom already had the disc out of the case and walked to the TV. She turned on the TV and the DVD player and slipped the CD into the slot. She took the remote and sat down on the new sectional I had just had to have. Jeff feigned reluctance before giving in quickly and took me out to pick it out. I realize now that he always gave me anything I wanted with very little difficulty. Before Mom could start the DVD, Jim opened the door and asked, "Is everything all right?" "No, Jeff is not here. His clothes are gone as well. It looks like he has left me. I am sorry it came to this. I will call a cab and wait outside. I have to get home and try to repair my marriage. I only hope I can," Jim told Lauren. "I only hope I can," he said as he walked out the door. For his children's sake, I hoped he could too. After Jim left, Mom started the DVD. I sat down next to Mom as the first scene opened. I was appalled to see myself walking to the pool in the small red bikini with Jim following along behind me. I was obvious he was leering at my butt. My mom gave a quick glance my way, then turned back to the screen. I tried to take the remote from her hand, but she would not give it up. I watched myself give amorous kisses to Jim and felt ashamed with Mom sitting there. Her eyes never left the screen. The next scene opened with Jim and me walking out of Lummis Park. The big difference in this scene is that you could hear us talking. When the phone rang and I called Jeff Doofus, I realized that he heard everything we said that morning. I was trying to remember if I said anything incriminating when I heard Jim say that our affair had been going on for 6 months. Mom stopped the DVD and put her face in her hands and started crying. I apologized. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know how I let this happen." She gave me a disgusted look and pressed play again. I listened as I told Jim, "Right, stud." I absolutely revolted myself with that comment. The third scene was of me topless at the pool. My poor mom had to watch me put myself on display and let Jim maul my breasts and manhandle my butt cheeks in public at the pool. I thought how dismayed she must feel looking at my debauchery. My heart sunk when I thought how Mom must have felt watching my wickedness. Next came the scene where I yanked on Jim's dick and pulled him into the room with it. What I said left no doubt we would be having sex. The next scene was the worst. I finally got to hear what I missed that night on the phone. There was no video, but Jeff must have recorded his side of the conversation. Jeff said, "You are spending your nights alone, aren't you, Lauren?" Then I heard muffled talking. That must have been when Jim stuck his cock in my face. Then Jeff asked again, "Lauren, are you there? You are sleeping alone, right?" It was said with such venom that if I heard it, I would have known that he knew. Thanks to Jim, I never heard it. All I said was, "Right, honey, that's right." The next scene showed a hand cover the camera lens, and it became apparent he was taking the camera off a tripod. The image on the screen moved wildly, finally stopping, looking out the sliding glass door out onto the balcony. It appeared to be placed on a table. Jeff reappeared and sat on a chair, dismantled the microphone and started to fold up the tripods, placing them in a black canvas bag. Abruptly, a scream pierced the night. I knew it was the moment that Jim gave me that incredible orgasm. Jeff's head swiveled to look out into the darkness. As his head turned back, I could see the agony on his face. He put his head down and I heard quiet sobs for about 5 seconds. Then he seemed to pull himself together, drying his eyes on the bottom of his t-shirt. Then he spoke out loud to himself, "That's the second time she has done this to you, Jeff. It will never happen again." He then stood, walked to the camera, and the screen went blank. Mercifully, the show was over. He had skillfully captured my infidelity for all to see. No one was more aghast than my mom, who hung her head and cried silent tears. No one was sadder except for me. When I saw Jeff's tears, I was filled with self-loathing. When he said the second time, I was confused. I did not know he had cried over me before. When he said it would never happen again, I was filled with fear. Fear for what I had done to my marriage. Mom asked me, "What are you going to do now? Do you want to save your marriage or run off with that guy outside?" My God, Mom, I love Jeff. Of course I want to save my marriage. I'm not running off with Jim. He has a wife and 2 children. He will never leave them. Whether he gets to save his marriage will not be his choice to make. It won't be your choice to save your marriage either. That will be up to your husband, if you still have one. He has had many days to make up his mind. You already have divorce paperwork sitting on your dining room table. What other things has he thought to do? If you really want to keep Jeff, you better talk to him soon and give him a good reason to take you back. I wouldn't wait too long. He already has a big head start. I called Jeff's cell number as soon as Mom left. He hadn't answered any of my phone calls, and I wasn't sure if he would answer now. I knew I had to try. Surprisingly, he answered on the second ring. There was no anger in his voice, and chillingly, there was no emotion at all. "Lauren, what do you want?" he asked. "Jeff, we need to talk. Will you talk to me?" "Sure, Lauren. When do you want to do this talking?" "Tomorrow, anytime you can make it." "Okay, Lauren, tomorrow at 2. Goodbye." Short and to the point, I thought. I did not like the lack of emotion I heard or didn't in his voice. He sounded so cold. It was as if he had made up his mind and was not going to change it. He was going to get the confrontation over with as quickly as possible. If I were wearing boots, I would be shaking in them. I realized this would not be easy. The next afternoon, I was looking out the front window when I saw his car pull into the driveway. Instead of coming in the front door, he walked around the side of the house to enter through the rear door. I ran into the kitchen and sat at the table that was set for lunch. Jeff walked through the door, I think surprised to see me sitting there. "Hi, Jeff. Thank you for meeting me today." He nodded his head in reply. He sat at the table, looked at the place setting, and then turned back to me with a questioning look. "I thought you might be hungry. I have lunch prepared in the fridge if you want to eat." He shook his head no, saying, "I've already eaten," and pushed the plate away. He looked at me again. His expression screamed at me. "You wanted to talk, so talk." I began, "Jeff, I want to tell. No, I need to tell you how sorry I am." It looked like Jeff was going to say something in reply, but I cut him off. "I know what you are going to say. Sorry for getting caught or sorry for cheating." By the look on his face, I knew I was correct. "Yes, I am sorry I was caught, but not for the reason you might think. I am sorry that I ever started cheating in the first place. The thing that bothers me the most about it is the pain and hurt I see on your face caused by my foolish actions. Knowing that I caused that is tearing me apart inside. Can you forgive me, Jeff? Even if you do, I don't know if I could ever forgive myself." I waited for Jeff to speak, yet he said nothing. I could see pain, anger, confusion, and even love flash across his face while I waited for a response. When he finally spoke, I was surprised at what he said. "Do you know that when I woke up in the morning, I would lay in bed and watch you sleep? Or after I would finish my shower, I would sit on the chair next to the bed and watch you?" I knew he did. I caught him a few times. On occasion, I would open one eye and say, "What?" He would smile and laugh quietly, coming to me and giving me a kiss on the forehead. "You look so peaceful lying there, even beautiful, at least to me." I would gaze at your face, looking at your eyes, every curve of your face, the way your nostrils would flare, the way your mouth would open slightly as if you were dreaming maybe about me. Now I think maybe about him. I thought how lucky I was, having you in my life. My guardian angel sent you to me to give color and brighten my otherwise drab existence. You've taken that away from me. The color and light are gone. Now, since Wednesday, when I wake up in the morning, I still smile to myself and think how lucky I am to have you, how much love I have for you, until I roll over to look for you, and you are not there. Then I remember what you did, and the pain and hurt returns. That has happened every morning since. The only difference is that every morning I love you a little less and the pain is not as bad. I realized that my mom was right. I waited too long. Maybe if I got home on Wednesday night, I could have talked to him and maybe made a difference. It seems that now I am too late. He has run what happened in his mind, and the choice he made is to divorce. The last thing I want. Please, Jeff, don't make a hasty choice. I know I've been a shit and I don't deserve any consideration, but I beg of you, give me a chance to make it up to you. Give me a chance to show you I can be the wife you deserve. Please give me a second chance. I looked at him, awaiting his answer. I saw his eyes tear up, then a tear run down his cheek. I reached over to his face and wiped the tear away with my thumb. I swore you wouldn't make me cry again. Now look at me, he commented sadly. Jeff, I heard you say on the DVD this was the second time you cried over me. When was the first time? Lauren, I fell in love with you when you got out of your dad's car the first time I laid eyes on you. My best memories are of that summer we spent together. My worst memory is when you deserted me at the harvest dance. You tricked me and dumped me for another guy. Just like this time. You left me to be ridiculed by Billy Barber and the rest of the football team. I don't know how many nights I cried at night in my bed where no one could see me. So you see, the Monday night was the second time I cried over you. The tear that just fell is, I guess, the third time. I'm sorry, Jeff. I seem to be saying that a lot today. This will sound foolish to you, but it was just sex. Foolish, illicit sex. He's gone and I could care less. I will never see him again and I won't miss him at all. All I need is you by my side. I don't know, Lauren. I saw you do things in public. You went topless for him. You let him put his hands all over you at the pool. What he said next sent shivers through my body. He shook his head sadly and said, I heard the scream. I know I can't compete with that. I won't compete with another man. I won't compete with the memory of that other man for my wife. If we stay together, I will always be competing with his ghost, trying to match your other man. You won't have to compete with anybody. You will never understand unless it happens to you. Again, Jeff sadly shook his head and began to rise from his seat. I thought he was about to leave. I saw my marriage going up in smoke. I don't know what possessed me. I leapt out of my chair, knocking it over, ran to Jeff and gave him a bear hug that I would not let go of. All the while I was babbling, "Don't go, Jeff. Please don't leave me now. When I saw your letter at the hotel, I realized what I was doing. I found out that you and my marriage are what are important. Please forgive me and take me back." He put his arms loosely around me and gently stroked my hair. After a while, he placed his hands on my shoulders and gently moved me back from him so he could look into my eyes as he spoke to me. Whenever I thought of us in the future, I saw the two of us together, a house surrounded by a white picket fence, just like in the movies. We would have 2 sons and a girl like you for me to spoil. She would have me wrapped around her finger, just like her mother did. I saw us planning weddings, celebrating anniversaries and special birthdays. I saw us growing old together, our love supporting us through the hard times. Now I see nothing. I have a big black hole where there used to be love. I see the numbing darkness of a life without you. He backed away, saying, I have to go. I have something to do. Don't go. We have so much to discuss. No, I have to write a thank you letter. What letter could be more important than trying to repair our marriage? And who do you need to write a letter to? Ronnie Millsap. Why? What does he have to do with this? He helped me to dump a cheating wife. He turned and walked out the door, whistling a tune I later learned was A Stranger in My House. 5 years later, my wife asked me to pull the car around to the front of the house. We were going to my folks for a Memorial Day cookout. I walked out the back door past the newly built 10-car garage to the cliff, overlooking the beach below across the Long Island Sound to the shore of Connecticut. I no longer lived in the rented house in Nassau Shores, but in the old town of Muttontown. Turning back to the garage, I had to decide what car I wanted to take to my parents' home. My eyes settled on garage number 5. I clicked the remote and stood by while the door went up to reveal my newest acquisition. I closed the door, started the engine. I loved the sound of the powerful rebuilt 390 V8 Ford engine. As the car cleared the garage, I lowered the convertible top and pulled around to the circular drive in front of the house. I got out and turned to look at the latest object of my affection. A 1961 Ford Thunderbird convertible with gleaming chrome, black paint, interior, and roof. God, she was beautiful. My wife opened the door and made a frown. The baby and I cannot drive with the top down, you have to put it up. I sighed and told Nina, okay, I'll put it up, but it looks so much cooler with the top down. If you ever want me to be in it with my top down again, you better put it up now. My mind went back to that day when I first got the car and we went out driving with the top down and Nina pulled her top down and I quickly hit the button to put it up. Nina smugly smiled. She knew how to use her prodigious sexual power. I met Nina 2 months before the divorce to Lauren was final. The one thing that Mr. Diamond, the bank president, agreed on with his ex-wife was their adopted child from Romania. While they hated each other, they both loved that little girl. The Diamonds ran a charity to help the plight of Romanian orphans. I knew I was expected to attend the $1,000 per plate fundraiser. As I had become a favorite of Mr. Diamond, I was seated at his table next to his wife. There was an empty seat next to me. Before I sat down, I looked at the card on the table. It said, "Reserved for I, Kiranova." As I sat down, I nodded my hello to Mr. Diamond and placed a small kiss on the cheek of the ex-Mrs. Diamond. I took a second glance at my boss because he had this mischievous smile on his face. It seemed like only seconds before this beauty in black sat down in the seat next to me. Mr. Diamond's face beamed, and his smile never faded as he introduced me to Janina, pronounced Janina Kiranova, a Victoria's Secret lingerie model. I later found that Nina was herself a Romanian orphan and a member of the board that ran the charity. Nina and I hit it off that night. We talked about our lives. She told me about her horrific life in the Romanian orphanages. I think she had me almost in tears. I wanted to hold her and protect her. She told me later that she could feel the empathy from me, and it made her want to find out more about me. She was asked to dance by many of the unattached men at the affair, but she turned them all down. I did not ask her as I thought she did not want to dance. Nina took the matter in her own hands and asked me to dance. I said yes, of course. We dated for 2 years before getting married. The wedding was held at Mr. Diamond's estate in Southampton, NY. I thought his wife was a little young for him at 35 to his 61, but he always had a smile on his face, so what do I know? We had a great first year when Nina came to me and said she wanted to have a baby. I asked her if she realized having a baby would put her modeling career on hold for a long time. She looked straight in my eyes and informed me that the one thing I want most in this world is to have your baby. A big smile crossed her face as she said, "Maybe more than one." I'm sure a big smile crossed my face and I suggested, "I think we should start trying right away." We both laughed and ran to the bedroom. A year and a half later, our son Jeff Jr. was born. We got in the car after settling Jeff Jr. in the car seat, in the rear of the car. The only non-stock part of the T-Bird was the air conditioner I had installed. I knew from experience, once Nina get all dressed up, she wants nothing to spoil her hair. She would rather ride in 100-degree heat than get one hair out of place. Getting the AC installed would make it more pleasurable for the both of us. As we walked into my dad's backyard where he was barbecuing burgers and dogs, I was shocked to see Lauren and her mom Cheryl sitting at the table talking to my mom. Nina was carrying Jeff Jr. and walked to the table and sat down. Mom quickly took her favorite and only grandson from Nina. I went to Dad and asked, "What the hell are they doing here?" My dad said, "Keep your voice down. Your mom invited them. She and Cheryl have become close since Frank died. Lauren was all alone, so your mother invited her also. You know she had a hard time getting rid of that asshole Billy Barber after you two got divorced." I knew she married Billy after I met Nina. I didn't think she was that stupid. Well, she did cheat on me with the asshole Beckman. I thought for sure that he would have gotten divorced. Instead, his wife took him back. She did have 2 kids to worry about. That must make a difference. For a long time, I hired a PI to keep track of him. Every time he got near getting a good job, I had the word put out that he was a bad employee and he lost out. It went on until he or his wife figured out that I must have a hand in his string of bad luck. Jane Beckman called and straight out asked me if Jim's bad luck at getting a job had anything to do with payback from me. Before I could answer, she told me that it not only hurt Jim, but herself and her 2 kids. She went on to say that she thought it was horrible what he did to me, but don't take it out on her children. I didn't come right out and tell her I was involved, but did say that I was sure he would have an easier time getting a job from now on. She thanked me profusely and apologized for him screwing up my marriage. I have no idea what he's doing now, as I let the PI go along with all the remaining hate I had for him. Actually, it was a big relief to get rid of the baggage I was carrying. I took my son from Nina and said hello to Lauren and Cheryl, then walking over to a bench by the rear door to the kitchen. A few moments later, Cheryl Chavo sat down next to me and reached out her arms to hold Jeff Jr. We sat quietly as she played with my 8-month-old son. Finally, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and lamented, "He should have been my grandson. I would have made the best grandma. You know that, don't you, Jeff?" I looked closely at Cheryl Chavo. She had aged over the last 5 years. I knew our divorce had been hard on her. She always liked me and was thrilled when Lauren and I had gotten married. "I know you would have, Mom. You were a great mom to Lauren, and I know you would have been the best grandma, too." "Thank you, Jeff. I have missed you the last 5 years. Oh, and congratulations on your promotion at the bank. Your dad tells me that you are in the #2 position there now." Yes, Mr. Diamond finally retired with a little pressure from the board of directors. They moved Howard Goldman to the top spot, and he took me along with him to the executive vice president in charge of operations. Basically, if I keep my nose clean when Howard leaves, I should move up to the president's position. "Jeff, Lauren wanted to talk to you but was afraid to come over. Can I tell her it's okay?" "Sure, Mom," I replied. "It's been 5 years. I'm sure we can talk civilly together." Lauren's mom went back to the table and spoke to her. Before she could get up, Nina came to me and said, "Be gentle with her, Jeff. She is very fragile. Don't upset her." I nodded my assent. Nina walked away as Lauren walked up. "Hi, Jeff, you're looking good." "Hi, Lauren, you do too." "Nina is beautiful, Jeff, inside and out, and a good person, I can tell." "Thank you. I have been lucky to have 2 beautiful wives." "That's not true. I may have been attractive outside, but inside, not so much." "That's not true. You are beautiful inside and out. You got blinded by Jim Beckman. I'm sure it was something I did to run you away." "Now that's really not true. Do you remember what I did at the dance with Billy Barber? What did you do there?" "No, it was me. There's something inside me that screws all the good things up. Something that's not so pretty. Let's change the subject. Mom tells me that you received another promotion at work. I always knew you would rise to the top." "Well, good things have happened to me in the last 5 years." I looked at Nina and smiled. When I turned back to Lauren, I saw she looked at Nina also. She turned to me and smiled also. "Jeff, there is one thing I need to clear up from that time 5 years ago. I hadn't wanted to go there, but she brought it up. It was the telephone conversation where I called you doofus. I want you to know that was the first time I ever called you that. To this day, I don't know why I did it. That's not why I brought that day up. It is what I said to Jim about you that day. I told him that you would be president of the bank and about how much money you made. I realized it sounded like I only wanted to be with you for the money. That's not what I meant at all. I knew you would be a success. I was always so proud of you. I just wanted to be there when you accomplished your goal. That's what I wanted to share with you. It was never about the money. Please believe it was not about money." When I first heard it, I was sure it was about the money. It wasn't until I let Nina hear what you said. She is the one that suggested that I did not have it right. She thought that from the look on your face that you were not putting me down but bragging about me to Jim. It made me feel so much better about you. I think I started to forgive then. "There is one more thing I need to thank you for." "What's that?" "What you did for Jane Beckman. She called me crying about what you had been doing to Jim. She asked me to call you, but I told her it would be better coming from her. I gave her your number at the bank. She called to tell me that Jim had finally gotten a job that could support them. She wanted me to thank you for her." "I'm glad it turned out well. I never thought about her or the children. I am glad it's over." I stood up and hugged Lauren. As we walked to the table, Lauren was crying happy tears, and Nina was beaming happily at me. We sat at the table and had an enjoyable day. On the ride home that night, we had the convertible top up, but Nina had her top down. It turned out to be another wonderful day.